Welcome back to the second part of my first experience boothing at Anime North. While part 1 was more about the overall experience attending the convention, this time I'm reviewing that experience and looking deeper into what went well and what I can improve on, as well as my thoughts on Anime North itself. Technically, by the time this video comes out, I would have already finished boothing at Anime North 2025, so I guess I'm a little late in getting this video out. Thanks for sticking around regardless. Our very first problem was not knowing how much to buy, and as it turned out, we ended up with way too much of some things and too little of others. Since we didn't have an indicator on what would sell or not, we had to guess, and would only find out the results at the event. For example, my Miku print sold out quickly by day 2, but the other prints only sold about 1 each. In general, the average amount we sold was about 3 pieces, with the most amount still being around 10. Typically, people will tell you that you only need to bring about 10 pieces for each product, especially if you're just testing the waters, which is really what we should have done, given that it was our first time selling. In the end, we bought quadruple the amount, but in retrospect, it's not a bad idea to buy your merch in bulk in case you plan to go to more cons or sell the rest online, and oftentimes it's cheaper that way. But if you're only just starting, it's a good idea to make a smaller amount and bring about 10 for each item. I just think it's funny we were like, go big or go home. So our process when dealing with a customer is to wait for the customer to decide what they want. You can say hello, but usually they'll come to you if they want something, and then they'll tell you what they want. I keep a notepad on hand to manually write down the numbers of their orders, like if they want A63, A65, and B3 for example, and that way we can keep track of them. That being said, I'm like one person. I have to listen to the order, write it down, then find the item and give it to them. And when you get 4 separate transactions all at once, I honestly don't have the time to write down every transaction, so I've definitely missed a few transactions in my notes. Initially I was worried about being slow, so I would kind of rush and find the items as soon as possible so the customers weren't just waiting awkwardly. But I realized the customers are more patient than you think, so you gotta remember, just calm down and find the stickers they want. Unlike our buttons and stickers, our charms weren't labeled behind the table, so most of the time I'm scrambling to find one specific charm that I need in the sea of charms that we brought. It was very annoying to be honest, so I need to find a better way of organizing it because it's too inefficient. I noticed other artists had their own shelving system behind them, which I think is very smart. Our setup of the merchandise used a bunch of miscellaneous boxes. There were 2 plastic containers for the buttons because there weren't enough sections in each box, so the last few characters are in a box on its own. The stickers were in a different plastic box that were labeled with sticky notes and separated by sheets of cardboard, and then the charms were either in a plastic tray or bagged in multiple different paper boxes. Eventually we started using the lids as trays to put the charms on, and everything was either on the floor, on the table, on the storage boxes underneath the table, or behind us. It was a mess. For storing our money, my helper and I each had a coin purse and wallet, and I had a bigger wallet for holding all the bills. People have suggested not to use a cash box in case of theft and use a fanny pack instead, so all the money is on you. But I didn't have a fanny pack, so I found the next best thing, a pencil case, which coincidentally was Prince of Tennis themed and matched my Prince of Tennis cosplay. It had a handle, so I used the carabiner to clip it to my pants. We also had a box of buttons and used the remaining space for loose change from transactions, which made it easier to access. For electronic payments like credit or debit cards, we invested in a small square reader. It's pretty common to use for small vendors, and it's an easy way to pay by simply tapping your card or inserting it on the bottom. The version we got is connected to my phone, which has all the cashier information on the app. However, if the phone went to sleep or I turned off the screen, it would eventually disconnect, and due to Anime North's poor data signal, every time a customer wanted to pay in card, I would have to open the phone again and wait a while before I could connect back to the reader. A few times the connection would fail and the customer would just wait awkwardly to pay. The solution at the time was that I keep the phone permanently opened despite it draining more of the battery. Most of the time when the customer came up, I would at least turn on the phone in case they wanted to pay with card. Love it or hate it, the square reader is incredibly useful. I'm surprised how many people have used card to pay, and kids especially seem to go for the convenience of using card over cash, even when they pay for $1 buttons. So it's not like we profit since the extra processing fee goes to Square, but they lose a few cents by using card. I only had one failed transaction at the beginning when someone tapped their card for a single sticker, and they walked away before the transaction completed. That was my bad though, because I didn't check if it was accepted yet. After that I started showing my phone to the customers so they could see the check mark and I give them the thumbs up. So thank you to all our customers that patiently waited while we got the orders ready and had to deal with technical difficulties. With my phone being an important device used in transactions, I also had to keep the battery life and data in check. Leading up to the event, I used almost no data for a month just in case, but after day 1 I realized the Square reader only uses about 100 megabytes, so we didn't have to be that strict on data usage. As for battery life, that's based off of the phone. I have pretty good battery life, and for 5 hours it does pretty well. Saturday was the only time I really needed the extra power bar, and I had a lot of life remaining after the charge. Obviously, if I were playing games at my booth, it'd probably drain pretty quickly, but I don't know, I didn't have that much free time on my hands anyway. Now, we had a problem with packaging bags. We didn't have large plastic bags to give to customers, just the 3x5-inch bags that we used to package the charms, and sometimes we didn't know whether we should package multiple things in one bag. We have a stash of pre-prepared bag charms with some unbagged charms in another box. So around day 2, we decided that if someone were to order multiple charms, we'd take one of the packaged charms and put the unbagged charms into the same bag. We also just didn't really have time to seal up the bags, so we generally gave people open bags. I think it's fine though, because it gives people the choice to seal them or not. There were a few times when people would specifically ask for bagged charms because they were giving them as gifts or something. And since we had a deal for 3 charms, I was sometimes worried if it looked nice when you shove 3 charms into one bag. On the other hand, I've noticed that other artists don't even bother removing the charms from the original packaging that is given by the manufacturers. A lot of them are still in the shipping packaging that it comes in, so maybe that might be the better option for conventions since they're already packaged. However, the way we package them with the open bag, it allows me to put in the business card and a little note for peeling off the plastic, whereas the default bags do not. I've seen other artists who use the default packaging but have larger bags to put all the charms inside. For next time, we should at least invest in bigger plastic bags to hold prints, so at least all our merch could be wrapped in some way, and the smaller merch can be individually wrapped beforehand for easy handling, which leads to another thing I need to change. First off, I think my business cards kind of suck. When they arrived, they felt more like regular cardstock paper with a picture slapped on it rather than a real business card. I think next time I'll probably invest in better looking cards. I also don't really like the design of the card, and I think the socials at the bottom are too small. Lastly, I think I'm going to have the backside include the warning label for removing the plastic off acrylic charms instead of having a separate note that I'd have to print out, hand cut, and slip inside the bags. The design of our display is quite basic. Stickers on one side with the buttons on the bottom. Charms were on the outside with open grids so you could see them from other directions. And the mystery bags are below that because they contain the charms. That way, each type of design is segregated to one side. We have a catalog on the outside so passerbys can take a glance, and then one right in the center for people to look at more closely. I found this paper holder thing that included a business card holder, so I decided to use it to advertise my socials and place my business cards in. VGen, a site for art commissions, did a collab with Anime North this year that let any artist with a table sign up and get an Artist Plus account, which lets them open commissions on VGen. So on the day we were preparing our display, VGen staff came by and handed me 2 VGen stickers and my own personal QR code that I could hang on my display. I only saw one person actually use the QR code, but that's okay, it was nice having it there. Funny enough, I did not realize until the next time I went to Anime North 2025, you had to set up the QR code first beforehand, so anyone who tried to scan the QR code before that, they were just sent to a default page. Whoopsie. Anyway, I found this old notepad that I had that's shaped like a stickman being stabbed, and it was a real eye catcher. People loved this little guy. And not only that, it had practical usage. I labeled it as an order form, but I think as a thick notepad, people didn't realize you could actually use it and write your order down. So on the second day, I took a few pages out and wrote "Hi" on the front, and I was happy that at least 2 or 3 people used the notepad after that. The square reader was placed at the front for easy access. I taped it onto the tablecloth just so that it doesn't slide away. When I ordered my banner, I expected it to hang off the square grids, which is what the holes were for, but my banner was taller than 1 square and we didn't have enough pegs to add more squares, so I had to use foam board and tape to add height to the banner. After that, we zip tied it, which might have been a mistake because it was a pain to cut off. I probably should have just used simple string. Mystery bags were displayed at the front, each in plastic boxes. We were using coin envelopes for the mystery bags, which wasn't a great idea because some of the charms didn't fit like the Pokemon charms, so we had to put them in fancier mystery bags. I put all the prints in a plastic binder sheet and used stick-on plastic hooks to hook them up to the grid. They turned out pretty good, but the problem was that my prints were honestly pretty small, which probably didn't make them very noticeable to people. I think I could make my prints a little bigger next time. As for the charms, these were hooked onto the grids because that's the easiest way to display them. But for some of the charms that don't use a clip accessory, I wrapped the chain around the grid and then held it back with a laundry clip. It's not the nicest, but it works fine and is less permanent than zip tying them. Stickers are just taped to the back of the plastic sheets and buttons are pinned to a fabric sheet, so I can just tape the entire sheet when I need to. So now they're all pretty secure and prevent theft, as well as making it easy for me to set them up and pack them again. In terms of the placement of signage, I put them generally next to each type of product, but I made the mistake of putting the button sign at the front of my display, which I learned that people won't see it because they're looking down at the buttons. Eventually, I put the sign on the table next to the buttons, and I think that worked better because you'd be able to see the price in the same direction. Whereas if it's in the front, the customer would have to know to lean back and look at the sign. Also, another thing was that people would just knock it over since it was at the front, and that's pretty dangerous, so it's safer taped onto the table. Similarly, I had my own sign for the table so people can remember my number and identify where they are. It was probably even more important to have the numbers displayed because I was a corner table and people would want to use that as a checkpoint to tell where they are. On the first day, I had my sign on the front in the corner, but because Enemy North actually gives us a free number sign, I decided to switch it with my own and put my nice sign right at the top corner of my banner. That way, when people take pictures of my booth or banner, they also had the number with it. I think something that artists don't realize, or maybe they don't care, but traversing through Artist Alley is a pain, and it's hard to tell where you are in the physical hallway compared to just looking at boxes on a map. So when a table has their number displayed, I think it's a lot easier for people to remember and find out where they are. And like I said, it makes it easier for people to come back to your booth and make a purchase, since they may not buy something immediately when they see it, especially if you're not well known. So just having your numbers displayed is already advantageous for getting people to come back to you. Now, if you notice, to the side of our display is our ad for the Nendoroids. It's a bit to the side so it doesn't distract from our main display. I taped it to an acrylic sheet so it wouldn't get damaged when people touch it or knock it over. I did notice one lady put her bag on to organize her things, which was mildly annoying, but hey, that's what the acrylic sheet was for. See, you can't get disappointed if you expected it. The last little decor we had was a crochet octopus that my sister made. We were initially going to put it on the front, but our display was already so tight there was no room, so I put it to the side next to me. I think it worked well because we were on the corner and people could still come by and see the little guy. The trouble with our booth is that when I sat down, I couldn't actually see the customer because the prints were in my face. Most of the time I had to poke my head out just to talk to people. The tablecloth was something I bought at Dollarama, and it was the only one that was big enough to wrap around the table. I think it worked well with our display though, since I had a cute theme going. The art I was selling was mostly cute chibi anime art, so I went for a pinkish magenta vibe, and the turquoise was a nice compliment. Next time, I'll probably adjust the tablecloth so it covers the front more, which leaves the back open for us. See here, you can see all our stuff on the bottom. It's not a big deal, but it would look a little nicer if the whole thing was covered like the booth next to us. Overall, our display could use some work, and maybe make the signs a little bigger for people to see. I also had trouble choosing colors and I wasn't sure if it was legible enough. People would ask obvious questions where all you had to do was point to the sign and figure it out, but it did make me think maybe the signs are not easy enough to notice. So I'll probably have to fix those. I do wonder how I'm going to set this up again if I include more merchandise because it already fits perfectly on the table. So the only thing I could do is make it taller and add more boxes. If you know what a convention catalog is, good for you. If you don't know what it is, you're not alone, because it seems like most people, customers and artists alike, have no idea what a catalog is. We barely saw any at the con that year. A catalog, specifically the ones used for conventions, is basically a menu of all your products with a list of prices that your customer can look at and use to order from. Turns out, plenty of artists don't even have a catalog and somehow expect their customers to look intensely at each individual thing at your booth and just hand you money. Some artists use a catalog only to advertise their latest products like a flyer, and other artists typically do not write the prices of their products, which is very strange because you're literally advertising your products, not your pretty pictures. Speaking from a customer point of view, it's mildly frustrating when someone has a catalog online that doesn't have any prices on it. Not everyone is going to go to the effort of finding your socials and DMing you just for them to wait for a reply. One look and people will leave, and then you've lost a potential sale. But obviously not everyone cares about advertising their products or trying to make big sales. Now, despite what I said, some customers also don't seem to realize catalogs exist, so even with 2 catalogs at my booth and signs with the prices next to them, I'll often get customers who need assistance with what's in front of them. I also tend to get people pointing and asking about things at my booth, not realizing I'm on the backside so I can't see what they're seeing. If they could point to the catalog in front of the both of us, it would be easier to communicate. Personally, I really like having catalog on hand as it not only lets customers look at all your products all at once, but also keeps you yourself organized. And this is because I also forget what I have on hand, and being able to quickly glance at my catalog will help me figure out what I need or what I'm missing. Typically, catalogs are like resumes. The company is only going to be taking a single glance at your resume before they dump it. When I'm shopping at a large convention like Anime North, I don't have all day to spend in the artist alley. I want to see what you have quickly and efficiently. If you don't have prices visible, it's a skip. If you don't put all your products in, it's a skip. Between hundreds of different artists, you should find a way to stand out and show things that make your art special. Since I have a lot of small physical merchandise, it works well to have a catalog with all the products. If you mostly have prints, you probably only need a booklet at the front with all your prints, but that's still considered a catalog. Again, if you're confident enough in what you're doing, maybe you don't need a catalog. I'm just one guy, you don't have to listen to me. But just know there are people, myself included, who really appreciate when you have a full catalog of all your products with a price listing. So let's move on to what makes a good price. Multiple people have actually told me that my deals were really good, so thank you. Common tip, but when you start a business, you have to spend money to make money, right? And probably your first con, you're not going to make that much. But what you get in return is making people aware of you, your art, and your products, building connections, and just the overall experience. In my case, I think my sticker deal is pretty good. One sticker is $5, which might seem a bit much, but if you buy 3, it's $12, and when you buy 5, it's $18. So the stickers get progressively cheaper the more you buy if you do the math. If you buy 10, it's the 5 sticker deal times 2. Buttons were our cheapest item, being exactly $1. That's pretty much as low of a price you can go, and you'd be surprised how many people bought them. Like this one guy who spent $20 on buttons. That's more money than buying a single charm or 5 stickers, but in return he does get 10 buttons, which seem to be good for gifts. As for my mystery bags, they're half the price of a charm. I think it helps that it's not a double-digit number, so it appears a lot cheaper, which it is. But even on a consumer level, it appears cheap. Charms were $15 each, but I also have a bit of a discount if you buy 3. Not everyone wants to get 3 charms, but it's good to offer that deal to the customer so they are made aware of it. Overall, people were actually very nice. Sure, I got some strange individuals, but I never encountered someone with actual malicious intent. One time there was a guy who wanted to buy a mystery bag, and then he awkwardly stood in front of the stall. When I said hi to him, he just stared and smiled at me like he was planning something, and he told his friend quite loudly that he was waiting. Apparently what he wanted me to do was turn my head around and talk to the other customer that was there so he could feel up all the mystery bags and essentially cheat to find the one he wanted. But he didn't seem to notice that my helper was also right there, staring directly at him this whole time. You know how we talked about that one guy who's gonna game the system? Well, we found him. Although it was a scummy thing to do, we already discussed beforehand of this exact scenario and concluded that if someone was that desperate to ruin the point of the mystery bag, all to save a few dollars on a plastic keychain and go through all that effort to trick the vendor, they can have the character, man. I'm not dealing with that shit. The funny thing is that my helper who was staring this guy down was more worried that he was going to steal it, but once she found out he was just cheating, she was like, meh, he still bought it, but I would laugh if he still managed to get it wrong. He was extremely obvious, so it was just even more jarring that he really thought he fooled us. Obviously, now that I've said it out loud, I'll have to change the way we do mystery bags to prevent cheating, but that's for another time. We had a situation where this guy and his 5 friends were all covering our booth in order to buy 20 buttons, and they spent a shockingly long time deciding which ones to get. At the same time, there was another person who wanted to purchase some stickers, and I felt bad because I didn't notice her, so my helper served her instead. But it was kind of rude that the group of people were getting in the way of other customers, especially when half of them weren't actually buying anything. Another time, I was talking to my friend outside of my booth and accidentally had my wallet open, so all the bills just spilled right out. And this guy alerted me of what just happened. I don't think anyone stole anything, but it was very nice of that guy to tell me about it. Definitely a scary moment though. I've seen complaints from other vendors about getting rude customers and harassment, but I have to say we were lucky enough to only receive nice people. Even the cheater was still nice and respectful. Most of the complaints did come from stamp rallies where people would line up to get something for free. I didn't join any stamp rallies mostly because I had no idea what those were or how to join one, but now that I've met other artists, I'll probably find out how to join one the next time. Newsflash, I figured out how to join one. One time someone bought a single $1 pin with a $100 bill, so I had to get $99 and change. It's not like I mind, but I just find it hilarious. Similarly, someone bought a single $1 button with credit card, so they had to pay the processing fee on top of it. Personally, I don't buy small change items on cards, so it was just an interesting thing to see. There was another guy that was looking at the charms and then tried to actually take the charm off the display grid. I had to hold the charm back from the other side to make him stop and be like, "Hi, those are for display only," and he seemed so frazzled by it. I told him he could order one, and he freaked out, possibly thinking I meant pre-orders. In the end, he bought something, but it was a very surreal experience. I can imagine he's never seen a setup like mine before and thought it was self-serve, but it's weird given that there's clearly only one for display, and I don't have a very unique setup. I've also gotten people trying to take off the buttons from the mat and realizing it's pinned there, so maybe my display isn't very clear. One time, a guy bought 2 mystery bags from the anime section in hopes to get One Piece characters. In the end, he didn't get them and decided to buy another mystery bag before finally getting Yamato. It's weird because he spent more time and money on the mystery bags than if he had just bought the charm he wanted, but people do like the thrill of gacha, so maybe it made him feel good when he got that Yamato. all the more power to you. Which reminds me of another kid who seemed to really be eyeing my Yamato charm, but he thought it was too expensive and came up to me like, why is it $15? Okay, so I price things relative to what the market is selling them at, and I believe $15 is a pretty good standard for charms. Heck, as of 2025, I think my charms are pretty cheap, to be honest. You see artists online who get overly worried about their prices, but I just kind of keep it to the standard that everyone else is doing. That or you make a good deal. In this case, the kid chose not to buy it, but the fact that he came up to my booth multiple times already tells me that it's worth his time. But other than those out of the norm interactions, everyone else was kind, patient, and appreciative, which was nice. Someone asked me if I was going to be at Fan Expo, to which I replied no, because this was literally my first con ever. I'm not prepared for an even bigger, more expensive con, but I think it's a nice comment to receive because it's like, wow, you think I'm good enough to table at Fan Expo? In the end, every single customer was good to great, and I'm very thankful for their kindness. Even to those that didn't purchase anything, it was nice that people liked my art. And thanks to those who commented on it, took pictures of my booth, or grabbed a business card. Thanks for dropping by. Now with Anime North themselves, I have to say the management for this event was not the best. There were a lot of mistakes made and they had to send multiple different emails correcting those mistakes. It was surprisingly messy. I was very surprised how little information was being sent to all the artists, and I felt like in order to stay on top of the news, I had to be part of the Discord group and ask questions about what was happening. But let's start from the top. February 11th was when I put in my application. I got the notification of my entry on February 24th, and on February 26th, I got the acceptance letter. So that's pretty good. Like in a few days, I got my answer, but then it was radio silence for almost an entire month until March 23rd when I got my contract, which I signed and submitted the same day. Meanwhile, my helper had received nothing and we were both waiting for our invoices for the table and the badges. Finally, on April 14th, 22 days after I got my contract, my helper got her contract. The next day, we got the table invoices, which we paid, and then it's not until 2 weeks before the event on May 11th when I finally get my registration code and table number. Halfway through the months of waiting, I go to Twitter to ask why things are taking so long, and it turns out there is one single individual who is a completely new staff member and is being trained right now to send out the invoices. I was also recommended to join the Discord, and in doing so I found out there were much more problems than I thought, like how some contracts not Artist Alley related couldn't be filled out and needed to be reissued. Also, for months they were still sending out secondary artists and helper contracts at the same time as the invoices, and this process is so long because apparently there is an email limit that they keep hitting and have to wait a day to send out more invoices. I'll admit I have no experience with this kind of thing, but I've never heard of any company having trouble sending emails to multiple people. It's weird that this seems to be a normal thing with Anime North and they've never seen it as a problem. Like, I get COVID was a thing, but I don't think that affects this process. Sure, maybe the contract changed to accommodate COVID rules, but it really shouldn't be so difficult to confirm our tables. Also, when I received the invoice for the table, the price was different from what it said on the contract. The contract said $209.05, but in the end we only had to pay $185. I'm not complaining, and no one mentioned it, but there may be something wrong here. With the invoice paid, at least we knew we had a table, but we didn't know where it was, and I would have liked to know that info so I can plan how to set up my table. Not having a table number for months was also problematic because we were notified about a limited quantity VGen sponsorship. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. But in order to sign up, you need a table number, which we didn't have. So it's like, you prioritize the special first come first serve event for artists before actually providing the prerequisite for signing up for said event. VGen themselves probably expected the artist to have a table months ago. Discord being the primary method of news was also difficult. The platform feels very casual, and with so many people chatting at once, I found it difficult to track important information. Another problem was that the map they gave us was wrong. Apparently the map was missing booths and some of the artists weren't shown, so the layout was just completely wrong, and on Discord they fixed it with the current layout. It moved us all slightly. It worked out better for me because I went from a center aisle table to a corner table, which let my booth be seen in all directions. But even when they fixed the map, there were still plenty of mistakes that the Discord group had to tell the staff members about. They ended up fixing the map at least twice and sent multiple emails throughout the night. I can only wonder how people outside the Discord feel about seeing an email that has all the information and then the next day your table changes location. Like, I don't know, if I hadn't seen the discussions in real time, I'd be so out of the loop. So you'd think that'd be the end of that, but another thing they mentioned in the contract was that tablecloth rentals were $10, yet I never received an option to rent a tablecloth. So I had to email staff about what happened with the tablecloths, and it turns out they're not renting out tablecloths this year. So it's like, the contract isn't right, it's already got 2 errors in it. Finally, on the first day of the event, my helper and I wanted to see the program. You know, the guidebook thing they gave out to attendees every year, so we could plan the rest of the day. But they told us they wouldn't have programs ready until later that day, after the con had already started. I understand that a lot of artists in Artist Alley aren't there to attend the con, but some of us still want to see what other stuff is going on. It's very odd to me, given that Anime North has been doing this for over 20 years and still doesn't seem to have a set system for handling contracts and scheduling its vendors. It feels like this is their first time doing this, and true, they're mostly volunteers and don't make money off of this, but I think managing a convention should not be this messy. I'd say I'm more baffled by the management than anything else. But okay, I've been pretty negative about that situation, so let's move on to the positives. Anime North overall was still fun. I rarely encountered too many problems other than not receiving my registration number, and the individual staff members that helped sort out all the issues are not to blame. Even that one trainee who had to send out those invoices. Let's just say Anime North improves on a scale like Pokemon games. We're getting there. Slowly. And one of the best things I think they did was the layout of Artist Alley, mostly because there was a lot of space between booths. 10 years ago, I'm pretty sure Artist Alley was like a smaller section within the vendor's hallway and it was near the back, but now Artist Alley is kind of in its own big room, and I definitely don't remember the autograph signing next to Artist Alley. As for Artist Alley itself, it's honestly a lot more professional than it used to be. Before the days of online stores and hashtag small business, cons were kind of the only way for a small-time weeb to sell their art and show people what they like. But nowadays, everyone's very professional and the quality and variety of their goods have also increased. It's a little sterile in a way because every amateur artist is now a business, but maybe that's just nostalgia talking. I'm doing the exact same thing, making products and drawing for my business, so I can't really talk either. But the other thing that was nice about the Artist Alley was that it was cold in the room, which is good because I didn't sweat at all. I don't think it was nearly as crowded as I remember it being. There was a lot of space to walk around. That being said, I think the layouts of the tables themselves could be better. I don't understand why the tabling system goes across but then down into the center aisle, and I think splitting the Artist Alley with the guest booths is a questionable decision. Personally, I would have swapped the guests with a Pro Plaza artist because at least all the artists would be together, and I don't seem alone in that idea because I'm pretty sure some artists near the top of the room didn't get nearly as much traffic simply because people didn't realize the Artist Alley continues past the guest booths. So coming back to this in 2025, I kind of get that table announcements are usually pretty late, but it still sucks in general, especially if you don't know whether you will be facing a wall or in the corner or something. Also, after going through Anime North 2025 with little to no changes in the layout, I really think the DLC tables should also be in the same room. I find it kind of pointless for them to be in the other room with the industry tables. There's a lot of large events in that room with the Gundam stuff and cosplay repair corner, and I feel like the Gallery Momochi, which I still don't really know what it is, should be in that room. Maybe it's split to incentivize people to go in there, but it sucks for artists who don't get a lot of traffic. And since it took me so long to make this part of the video, I gotta say, in 2025, management has already made some pretty big improvements in their scheduling, and I felt the con went way smoother than it did last year, but that will be for another and hopefully shorter video. On the other hand, I also attended Toronto Game Expo in 2024, and in comparison, Anime North's management was still a bit disappointing. My experience with Toronto Game Expo went extremely smooth with clear instructions and constant communication. Even when there was a slight delay on the table placements, they sent out an email notifying artists about said delay, and lining up for badges was quick and orderly. It felt normal, honestly. I get that Game Expo is way smaller and more indie, but it's because Anime North is much bigger, much older, and more established. You'd think they'd have all their shit together. Anime North felt like when you stuff all your junk into the closet to give the appearance of a clean room. Cause while Anime North looked really nice and organized on the outside, evidently the management behind it was all a bit chaotic. But overall, the event went fairly smoothly, so I can't complain. I wish I had explored more outside of the Artist Alley, but I still had a great time. So good on you, Anime North, and I hope to see more improvements in the coming years. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. With how long this video was, I'm glad I split them into separate videos. Believe it or not, I still want to make a part 3 for this, but it will be more of a general preparing for your first Artist Alley type of thing, since by the time I get it out, I'll probably have a lot more experience with cons. However, if you enjoyed the video, click that like button and comment below on what you think of Anime North or Artist Alley recently. On this channel, I often discuss my opinions on video games and anime and tell stories about my life. So if you're interested, you can subscribe, click the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.